Hey Bob, we gotta deal with that ghost problem out in the graveyard. What do you mean what graveyard? The graveyard I made. I even made a tombstone for you, Bob. How would you like to learn how to make some incredible tombstone designs and deathly statues for your cemetery display? But let me explain to you how I did it, my skeleton friend!
So this is how the gravestones start out, as just blocks of dense styrofoam. These are required by someone who was getting rid of a hot tub packaging material, and so we acquired it to make some awesome gravestones. As you can see, I'm just measuring out the sizes I need for the various blocks and tombstone shapes, which will be carved into shape later using this tool, the serrated blade. It's great for cutting large chunks of this foam. Squeak, 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 squeak. And it's also good for cutting edges, cutting pits and cracks and almost slight details into the foam. It's a very versatile tool. It's great at cutting stuff, just not cutting food. So it's been reacquired as an art supply. And cut with the precision of a surgeon. And you're good to go. This is a Dremel with a router head and a mill bit sticking out just a little bit, a 1/4 inch, to engrave the epitaphs. I just print these out on my computer, and I acquired some kindergarten stick glue from a kindergartner and slap it down onto the tombstone to hold the paper in place, and then I just router out all the details I want. Take your time, and you'll be fine. Just doing a little bit of cleanup work. And now it's time to make monster mud. It's a stone-like, cement-like weatherproofing texture material, which is great for making gravestones. And it's made from using joint compound, DRYLOK weatherproofing stuff, and exterior paint. And this is my mixing apparatus, which works great. And that drop cloth will be the star of the show later. But first, let's mix up some monster mud. Yes, mixing it good. Mix it good, piggy. I use 5 parts joint compound, and then 1 part DRYLOK and 1 part exterior paint to make what I need, the nice muddy goo. And then you take your muddy mixture and glop it onto your tombstones. It seems I attached a piece of wood to this tombstone, just trying stuff out. And I learned that applying more of the mud is better than not applying enough and suffering the consequences later. For instance, you can see that in the cracks and crevassiers, I'm adding more of the stuff and then just wicking it away with the brush later with simple wiping and stabbing motions. And giving everything a very lucrative coat. Lucrative? Luxurious? Liver mortis? This is a foam skull I've been sitting on for a while, which was affixed to the grave using great stuff, which is a gap-filling material. It goes and it's good for foam, as acting as a mild adhesive. And as you can see, I am just going over the whole thing, even the skull, and dabbing all that mud into all of the detail pits and areas that will need it later. It's always good to add more and remove some stuff later than have not enough. And when it's all fully coated, luxurious, that's the word I was thinking. You let it dry, don't touch it. The next day, I came back with a sacrificial paintbrush I didn't mind sacrificing to the mud, and it seems like everything is pretty dry. And I'm drilling out the holes using my drill in this crazy bit that I've marked off the size I want. Drill it straight, and this looks like it still needs to dry a little bit. This are 2 milk crates, yeah. And you'll see, I'm going to attach bits of styrofoam to the outside as a base. But first, we're going to be working on the base of the Reaper-like structure using these threaded lugs. I think that's what they're called. I don't know what they're called. But first, I'm going to attach these blocks of wood to the milk crate, and then this piece of wood right here will be removable using these threaded lugs, using some straight voodoo magic. Let's see, I'm going to drill that in there so these screws can bolt the whole thing together and take the screw out, and the whole thing comes off. That's the idea, but first, I am taping a skull to a stick. You don't have to use Galaxy duct tape, but it adds extra coolness to the effect. We just need to get it affixed on there. And there's different ways you can go about doing that. I'm drilling in a block of wood to the other block of wood, and I'm applying some 5-minute Gorilla Glue epoxy really quickly. We don't got a lot of time. And I'm taking this threaded lug, I'm applying the glue to the thread part, just that. And the idea is that if I drill in the entire thing all at once, that whenever I unscrew it, only the screw part will come out. Actually worked. Do one more. And screw the whole menagerie all up in there. And then unscrew the screw, only then to add that piece of wood that has a skull on it, and throw a washer in there, and you can screw the whole thing together. And the idea is that this whole base part can be detached for later storage, or the the impossibility that you'll ever want to not have a Reaper-like figure on display at all times. Give me that. And here is my whole setup. As you can see, I've added some extra bits, like a pool noodle, EVA foam cut out into the shape of a rough rib cage shape, and then there is some like a dollar store suit of armor plastic thing. It was affordable, and it creates a bulkier part for the torso area. And so now I'm adding those pieces of styrofoam to the milk crates. How, you ask? Well, I make some holes, make the holes bigger with a ballpoint pen, and the idea is that I'm going to take some zip ties and fix them like so, push them through there, clean it up a little bit so it doesn't look too intrusive, and zip tie it all together, and bada bing, bada boom, it's all sitting together, all nice together. But that's not the final step. I take extra of this green stuff gap filler and I spray it all in there, and now it's all fully together. And that drop cloth has been cut into 3 pieces. That larger piece on the right has a slit cut through it, which will act like a tunic, which will be draped over the skeleton frame, and the other parts will act as a hood and a sash. But first we need to mix up some more monster mud. Mixing it up good, mix it good, mixy, mixy, mixy. And then we drown the drop cloth with the monster mud. Make sure it is completely saturated and marinated in gooey goodness.
And this is the part of the video where the footage cut out.
Shape of a wraith-like figure, and I even attached a hand and some guts to it. You'll notice that I just duct taped it all together on the inside and added some screws, and now it has a hand. I got that at the dollar store also. And let this whole thing dry. Meanwhile, back in the layer is my favorite part, the weathering process. And I'm going over all of this stuff with watered down black acrylic paint, brown paint, green paint to add sort of a mossy effect. And the idea is that I coat the entire grave with these various colors in sort of a mismatched area, making sure to apply extra paint and pigment to the cracks and edges, because that's where all the time and grime would build up. And then using a rag, I just go over and kind of dab it off. And I continue that process until it adds the effect that I like. And there's different ways you can go about doing this. You can create big drippy effects, or you can make it look incredibly weathered and near unintelligible. You can make it look more pristine. You can make it look more knobby. Different sorts of techniques to make your stones do different things. And I just take a paintbrush and I just stab it all up in there. I take the rag and I wipe off the excess. And I just repeat this process until it looks as good as I like it to look. And you can take a darker pigment black and go into the parts that you want to bring out further details, such as the pits of the eye sockets on the skull and maybe the lettering. And you know, this whole process, it's not perfect. It doesn't look incredibly well stylized, but that's the point. It's nature. It's imperfections are what make it so perfect. And just repeat the same process with the same thing. You go back over the statue once it's all been fully monster mudded and dried, and you apply your wet weathered effect. I wanted this to have different sort of looks. For instance, I wanted the statue to look like it had a lot of moss buildup all up in sort of its guts area. I wanted it to almost look as if there was a sort of black mold or something that was accumulating on it, which just adds to the extra effect of these being from the plague realm. Yeah. And again, there's different ways that you could probably go about this. Your paint job may not be my paint job. It's entirely up to interpretation. It's subjective. And everyone's got their own tips and tricks and ways to go about it. My idea is that I wanted to darken up the parts that I wanted to be obscured, and only to bring out the further details of the striking silhouette of the skull face hiding underneath the hood, and applying moss onto the surface areas of parts of the tombs and stuff like that. Everybody's got their own creepy flair. And as you'll see, I'm loading all that watered down paint all over it, making sure that it's get fully coated with something, some kind of a color. I don't want it to be just a base gray coat. And then I go back over with the rag and I wipe off the excess on the surface points, allowing all of the spooky bits to hide in the shadows, and the even spookier bits to appear in the light. Very nice. And I'm going back in with some black pigment paint, again into the eye sockets and pits, to bring out those details just a little bit more. And I'm doing a very quick slapdash paint job on certain parts. I do not want it to look extra perfect. If I hyperfixate on something looking too perfect, it will come out looking artificially made, which is it's all counterintuitive to what this weathering process is all about. Make it cry a little bit of black soot. These are some lawn stakes that I got at the store for relatively cheap, and they will do the trick of mounting these tombstones into the ground and holding them there. We don't have a lot of wind around here, so it's not that bad. And then I take some wooden skewers and add some extra foam pumpkins I had lying around. And there you have it. A graveyard is born. And I even added extra stuff like a lantern and some of that cheesy spider webbing material. Not a lot, just a little bit to add to the effect, with our big derpy spiders in the background. Yes, it's exactly how I imagined it in my head, which is great because that doesn't happen very often. And all the tombstones look very nice, weathered and done up in their own way. Points if you recognize what these names are references to. Except for Charles and Bob. Those are my skeletons. And at night, the graveyard takes on a new form. New shapes and shapes. A little bit of lighting, maybe a fog machine. Could really add to the effect. And there you have it. Your own graveyard.
A huge shout out to the Patreon Plague Squad for continuing to make these videos happen. If you like this kind of thing and you would like to support the Plague Life endeavor, please head over to the link down in the Nexus somewhere. And until next time, stay creepy.